Hey ladies, welcome back to my channel, Parenting with Purpose. I'm Christian Galloway. So last week we were talking about strongholds and specifically talking about the stronghold of lust and promiscuity. Well, this week, as I was preparing the message, I had another topic. I had my notes ready, and God was just telling me, like, I need you to start over. And we're going to continue talking about the strongholds of lust and promiscuity. We're talking about lust and sex, um, and the strongholds of it, right? Today we're going to dive into the habit, like how the habit forms and what comes from that, right? So last week we also talked about that lust is not just dealing with sex, but it's also you can lust about anything, over anything. It could be money, sex, power, really anything, right? And so let's go ahead and get into this message. Before I get into it, I do want to say that I can really see how God is bringing me back to that little girl, to show me where I dropped the ball, to show me why I made certain decisions, um, and to get the healing from it. Because, yeah, I'll just say that. And so getting the healing um, from it all, but taking me back to where I first dropped the ball. Why did I make those decisions? Why did I, what in me was calling for that, to make those type of decisions, to start having sex out of marriage, right? So I just want to share that with you. And so if this is something that you can relate to, go ahead and stay tuned. If you know someone, go ahead and share it with them. But without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. So like I said before, a person can lust after money, sex, power. Really, they can lust over anything, right? And so I want to share with you, there are two types of desires. Because to desire something, or let me backtrack, to lust after something is to have a strong desire. It's to have a craving for something, a yearning for something, okay? To have desires in general is not a bad thing. There are two types of desires. There's the godly desires, right? God says, delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. So there are godly desires. And then there are the evil desires that are considered the lustful desires, okay? Godly desires will always bring God glory. Evil desires will be the very opposite, right? And so I want to share that with you. When we're talking about a specific type of a specific topic of, such as sex or money or power, to lust after that is to lust after that particular thing. So money, sex, and power are not bad in itself. It's the fact that our hearts are already set on it. Our mind is already set on doing something, wanting it more than anything else, right? And so sex is not bad. Let's break this down. Sex is not a bad thing. We are sexual beings. God created us as sexual beings. But God has also made it very clear that we are to have sex within marriage. So sex is a gift from God, but it's only to be had within marriage, between a husband and his wife. When it comes to power, power is not a bad thing, because God says, behold, I give you power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and by any means nothing shall hurt you, okay? When we talk about money, it says that for the love of money is the root of all evil. Money is not evil. It's the love of money that is the root of all evil, okay? God also says in, I think it's in Deuteronomy, where he says, I will give you power to produce wealth. So sex, money, and power, they're not bad things in itself. But when we get to a point where we feel like we need to start manipulating our ways, manipulating things or manipulating people to get money, sex, or power, and we leave God out, that's when it becomes lustful, because you're leaving God out of it and it's not bringing glory to God. Is within the context, if it's not bringing God glory, it is literally this strong desire, this craving, this yearning for it it becomes lustful. Okay, in a sense, it can also serve as pride, because you're trying to manipulate your way into it, which means that you're leaving God out of it, which means that you think that you can do this on your own. Like, I don't need God, I'm going to go after it because I want it. It becomes selfish. It's a selfish desire. When we talk about the stronghold of lust, something that God revealed to me is that the stronghold of lust doesn't just come from the first time that you have sex outside of marriage. So just because you've had sex one or two times out of outside of marriage, doesn't mean that you struggle with the stronghold of lust and sex. Last week we talked about a stronghold is like a fortress. And when you pull up a picture of a fortress, it's like a tall structure, and it's bricks on top of bricks on top of bricks. And so every time that we, commit a sin in that same area, it is building that stronghold. It's building this this tall structure that literally that's where Satan is now dwelling in your mind, because he's telling you all these different lies of deception and trying to get you into into the same space. He's trying to keep you there. Once he gets you there, he's trying to keep you there. So that's where Satan dwells, in your mind. All right. So every time that sex, just because you've had sex one or two times outside of marriage does not mean that you struggle with the stronghold of lust and sex. It's the motion of you going back and forth, having sex. Okay, I hope that's making sense. It's now in a repetitive state of you going back and forth of having sex outside of marriage. That's when a stronghold is being created. And that's how the habit begins. That's literally how the habit begins. It starts off that way because you're going back and forth. All right. I want to read James chapter 1 verses 14 through 15 because it was really enlightening to me. It was very clear. And so James chapter 1 verses 14 through 15, it says, each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. I want to break this down. It says, each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire. So the desire is already in us. Our eye has already been set on it. The man is looking right, smelling good. We already know what we want, right? And it says, each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own desire and enticed. Okay? The word enticed means to be led astray. Now, what's interesting is to be led astray, that requires an outside source. Like the word enticed, to be enticed, we're enticed, which means it requires an outside source. Okay, so it's something that's dangling in front of us, all right, that looks good and it sounds good to us. And I want you to ask yourself, what is it? Like, what was it that was dangling in front of your face? What was it that was just right in your face, knowing that you already had the desire for it? But now the person comes and they're looking good, they sound good, smelling good, just right in your face. But remember, you've already had that desire in you. Okay? So what is your flesh already desiring that an outside source is using to trick you and deceive you into following along with pleasing your own selfish desires? What is your flesh already desiring that an outside source is using to deceive you and trick you into following along with pleasing your own selfish desires? Your own selfish desires, which means that God is not in it. And it's not going to bring God glory, which means that it's what we talked about earlier. It's an evil desire and it's considered lustful. Okay, so it's selfish in every way, and it's only about me, myself, and I. It's all about pleasing, getting my own needs met. It's only about what I want, what I desire, and I'm going to go for it. Why? Because I want it. It's all about me, myself, and I. It's not bringing God glory, and it's selfish. And we talked last week about, how sex is a gift from God. When you're having sex within marriage, you're not focused on yourself. You're more focused on how you're serving your spouse. Both of you all are serving one another. And so I don't want to get too deep into it because I'm going to touch on this topic again, on this section again later on in this message. But I want to share with you, so we've covered what the word entice means. It means to be led astray, and it requires an outside source to actually entice you, right? But then the word conceive, so let's go back to it. It says, then after desire has conceived. Most of the time we think about being pregnant as women, right? We've conceived a child. But in this context, where they're talking about, the word conceive means to seize, to take, and literally to make a person a permanent prisoner. I thought it was mind-blowing when I was doing this research and I'm praying and just talking with God. Like, now it's starting to make sense how things take place when it comes to lust and sex, right? So it says, then after desire has conceived, which means after desire has seized, after desire has been taken, after desire has made one a permanent prisoner, okay, it gives birth to sin. It gives birth to sin. Now, I want you to pause, because our children are not sin. God clearly says our children are an inheritance from the Lord. Our children are blessings. The sin that it's referring to is sexual immorality and all its cousins. Okay, so once it gives birth to sin, we fall into sin, and sin, when it is full grown, it gives birth to death. So let's take this a little bit slower. The moment you were led astray, you and I, because I've been down this road as well, the moment we were led astray by what we wanted, what we craved for, what we yearned for, okay? The moment we were led astray, we fed our appetite. We already knew we wanted sex. We already knew that, this man is looking good, he's sounding good, he smells good, and you had all kind of thoughts roaming through your mind, okay? Just keeping it real. You had all kind of thoughts going through your mind because it was already in your mind to have sex with this man, okay? Again, this channel, I made it for single moms, okay? So that's why I'm speaking just about the man. So you already had it in your mind. You fed your appetite. You fed your craving, and it gave birth to sin, which is the sexual immorality, right? But when it says that the sin is now full grown, meaning complete, you've completed the sin, right? It then gives birth to death. Death meaning spiritual death. So I want you to think about this, because looking back, when we had sex, how did you feel? Like, how did the relationship start dwindling down? What did you notice about yourself? Not immediately, but maybe months later, years later, or maybe it's just now that God is bringing it to your attention to show you you're not who you used to be. You're not who God created you to be. So that spiritual death took place when you were depleted. You were constantly giving yourself away, so now you feel even more empty than you went into it feeling, right? You feel this void, okay? And filling that void, let me just pause right here. You already felt empty, and you were looking for something to fill it. We've talked about this multiple times already, but anytime that there's a void and it's not filled by God, it leaves room for the enemy to come in. Deception, tricks, right? And so it's not so much that you went into it wanting the sex part. You went in you were looking for love. And that part, God is still working on me with that. So I'm going to put a cap on it at, right there. You didn't go in looking for sex. You went in looking for love. Okay? The next piece, death took place when you no longer recognize yourself. Again, you used to laugh. You used to be free to, you were joyful. You were vibrant. You were full of energy, full of life, right? You were creative. Like, you were ambitious. You don't even dream anymore, right? It's hard for you to dream again. And you're like, okay, I used to be her. And it's not good, so don't settle, because God is wanting to revive you. He's wanting to bring you back to life. Remember the scripture that says, a thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. God says, I came so that you may have life and have it more abundantly. Okay? So you don't have to settle for what the enemy has lied to you about or tried to make you believe. You don't have to settle for that. God is wanting to revive you. And I honestly believe that because you're watching this video, that's what he's wanting to do. He's wanting to revive you. He's wanting to bring you back to that little girl who was full of life, full of joy, full of laughter, full of energy, full of big dreams that God had put in your heart anyway, right? He had given you those desires. And so along the way, because of sin, and specifically we're talking about sexual immorality, lust, and the strongholds of lust and sex, but it took from you. It didn't happen in the context that God created. God created sex to be experienced, to be had within the limits, within the parameters of marriage. God he's not trying to stop us from having fun. He wants to protect us because he knows what happens when we step outside of marriage and have sex. If we're not married yet, we shouldn't be having sex. All right? Death took place when you felt separated from God. You can no longer hear God like you used to. You no longer, maybe you stopped going to church, or maybe you're struggling to get up on Sundays. Maybe you were used to reading your Bible. Maybe you didn't read the Bible, but you were doing your best to read devotions, right? And because of that separation from God, you slowly started getting out of rhythm. You slowly started getting out of that routine, and you felt now you feel separated from God. Death took place. Your spiritual death took place when you felt lost and uncertain about things. You're uncertain about your future. You began grieving and going through a range of emotions. Like, when you think about how after you had sex in that relationship, how did the relationship start dwindling down? Like, how did it start? How did you start having different arguments and having, different insecurities rise up that were always there? It was always there, but the desire, let me put it like that, the evil desire that we already had in our minds, it birthed. Once it was conceived, it birthed sin. So I wanted to share, I did my best on trying to paint this picture and make it more realistic, make it more practical, so you can understand going back, like just thinking back on the times that you had sex outside of marriage and you were in these different toxic relationships, and how things took place, how you walked into the opportunity to where you found yourself, you started having sex, and then one thing led to another, and it was the motion of going back and forth, back and forth. And that's how the strongholds are built. That's how they're created. And so we as humans, as flesh, we are not strong enough to break a stronghold. Only God can. And so we have to pray on it. We have to pray and ask God, would you please break this stronghold? And so with that being said, I hope and pray to God that this message has blessed you, that it has enlightened you, that it has illuminated some things to you, just like how it has for me while God was giving it to me. And if there's anything that God has taught you, that God has revealed to you, that you believe will help, go ahead and drop it down in the comments. I would love to read it. We're on this journey together. It's not a one-woman show at all. I am still learning myself. And so I would love to see, read your testimony. I would love to see what God has revealed to you, what you've learned. And if you know someone, go ahead and feel free. Go ahead and like this channel, subscribe to this channel, send it to someone else that you know will benefit from this video. And I think that's pretty much it. I hope you have an amazing weekend, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.